Okay, welcome back to another one. I'm Oswald. This is the Sabbath School Summary, and we're on Lesson 5. This is going to be All Nations and Babel. So let's read the memory verse. Therefore, its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there, the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. Genesis 11 and verse 9. Here's the first main thing to see about this lesson. This lesson is going to go over a couple of curses. So there's two main stories here. One story is that just after the flood, Noah ends up, after this huge climactic moment of the flood, he overcame the world in a sense. He ends up going and planting a vineyard and he gets drunk. He drinks a whole bunch and he ends up passing out, I guess, inside of his tent somewhere. His son comes over and he finds him in his tent. He's like naked, just laying out, and his son goes around gossiping about his dad to the other brothers. The other brothers kind of come in with a covering to cover their father, nakedness in front of everyone. And basically Noah wakes up later and finds out what all happened. He got drunk and his son basically gossiped about him. His son's name was Ham that did this. And so basically Noah wakes up in a huge fit of rage, pronounces a curse on Ham and Ham's descendants. So this is going to be Noah's grandson. Noah pretty much pronounces a curse on his grandson, which is extreme enough. But basically, in short, the grandson is always going to serve the brothers. So he's always going to be insignificant. The people, the generations that come out of Canaan, that's his name. Canaan is going to be insignificant, and he's going to be serving his brothers pretty much for the rest of eternity. So that's the curse that Noah places on his grandson, which is kind of reckless, but it is what it is. On the other side, you see a curse later happening in Genesis chapter 11, and that's going to be the Tower of Babel. God comes down and looks on the earth, and he sees this huge gathering of people coming together. He wants the people to be scattered abroad on the earth and fill the earth. That was his goal. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. They come together and they're not filling the earth. And instead they're building this huge giant tower going up into the heavens. And God is displeased and he basically pronounces, you could say, a curse. But basically it's just throwing out different languages on people that ends up confusing everyone and they get scattered. So what the author wants you to see here is that there are two curses that are being pronounced, and God is going to bring out good out of both of these curses. One with the curse of Ham, with this Canaan issue. He's going to always serve his brothers. The people that come from the land of Canaan and the people that are the descendants of Canaan are eventually going to be able to have you can say, an opportunity to reconcile themselves to God. Canaan is eventually going to become the promised land. And on the same token, the situation with Babel, the Tower of Babel, what you're going to find is that situation that caused so much division, multiple languages, is eventually going to be the thing that brings people together for God. If you remember the day of Pentecost, Pentecost was a time in which people came together and languages were being brought back together. They weren't being dispersed. So it's going to be kind of a unique situation, but the point is God is going to bring about something good out of something bad. And the question is, has God done anything like that in your life? Has anything good come out of bad situations or what felt like a curse in your life? That's what you should probably think about a little bit more. That's what the author's trying to get at. So here's the second point. What was really the point of the Tower of Babel? Flip over to Genesis chapter 11, verse 3 and 4. It says, "Then they said to one another, 'Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly.' They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city, and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth.'" And if you get that straight, they don't want to be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth, which is basically God's purpose. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. They don't want to fill the earth. They want to come together, and they're building this giant monument that reaches up into the heavens. And the question is why? Well, in the chapters before, you start to see there was a massive flood. So if they can build this tower that reaches the heavens to escape the flood, then what they've done is escape the judgments of God. And so what this really is about is people becoming more unified to escape the judgments of God. And what you find here, this principle of trying to survive and be significant. Trying to survive and be significant. And survival and significance plays a major role in a lot of the motivations of humanity, the reasons of why we do different things that we do. And a question maybe you can ask yourself is, in what way has survival or significance played a role in things that you've done, both good and bad? So just a quick topic, don't spend too much time on it, but it is a pretty important point. So the last point, God does not actually destroy the Tower of Babel. What he does is he confuses the languages. And the big question is why? If the Tower of Babel is being built and it's in utter defiance against God's will, why doesn't he just go down and destroy the actual tower when he splits up the people? And the big point here is this, because ultimately this is not so much about the tower, it's more about human priorities once we get unified together. What do humans do when they come together and get unified in one accord? What God is trying to do as he thinks about it, he thinks of this plan to change the priorities of mankind. And what he does is he finds that if he ends up changing a basic thing that we have taken for granted, if he takes something that we have taken for granted away, immediately our priorities begin to shift. So what's something that they took for granted is simply the communication. Everybody spoke the same language. It was just all assumed. They were on the same page. Everybody had the same perspective. Let's build this thing. God goes down, confuses the languages. He takes something they took for granted away, and immediately their priorities begin to shift. So the main thing that we find in this story is simply this. Once something is taken away from you that you took for granted, your priorities immediately shift. And that's what happens with human beings. So a big question to kind of think about here is, what's something that you take for granted? If it was taken away from you, immediately your priorities will be shifting. This could be spiritual, it could be physical, whatever it may be. But each and every one of us, and to some extent, have taken something or someone for granted. And if they were taken away from you, or that something was taken away from you, your priorities would immediately shift. This is what happens here at the Tower of Babel. It's a shifting of priorities because something was taken for granted and God now took it back away. Either way, that's the wrap up for the lesson of this week. Again, join us next week. I'm Oswald. This is Profound Meditations Sabbath School Summary.